into this. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Daniel Stearns. I'm a reference assistant at the Indiana State Archives. One of my duties here is to respond to requests for modern military records. Um, some of you may have already worked with my colleagues in the reference team, Keenan, Vicky, and Michael. They have been doing this a lot longer than me, and they're very knowledgeable about this topic. They know a lot more than I do. So feel free to, if you ever have any questions in the future, direct those questions to them as well. Like I said, I'm far from the most experienced person on the team. This presentation is meant to was meant to inform veteran service officers that we interact with, as well as the public, about our military records that we house here, with the goal of better serving the veterans in our community. So get some housekeeping out of the way first. So if everybody coming in can please mute your microphones, so that volume does not interrupt the presentation. We're going to keep this to 45 minutes. So if we're not able to get to everybody's questions, feel free to send me an email or send an email to our ARC email address. If you do have a question, feel free to place that in the chat. And as a reminder, the meeting will be recorded, so this will be available later.
I get no sound.
And you can always watch this at a later date.
No, I just comes out of my.
Okay. The next slide here. So we'll begin with a brief overview of our presentation. We're going to start with what military records IARA houses, how those records are organized, how these records can be requested. I'll do a brief overview of the MPRC fire of 1973 that many of us have heard about, and want to talk a bit about why these military records are here and how they came to be. So our military records collection could be broadly divided up into two different categories, early and modern military records. So for the early military records that we house, those would be the Indiana Militia, 1811 to 1896, Indiana National Guard, 1898 to 1940, records from the Mexican-American War, the Spanish-American War, the Civil War, and World War I. If you have any questions or want to learn more about this collection, you can go to our website and look at the webpage for our military records, and a lot of information is available there. For this presentation, though, I just wanted to focus on the modern military records, which will include bonus files for World War II, bonus files for the Korean War, bonus files for the Vietnam War, and a section of records of 1979 to 1988. As far as how these records are organized, like I said, we have bonus records for World War II to Vietnam, and the bonus records, bonus files, as they're called sometimes, are applications for veterans of Indiana of these wars that applied for a bonus that was made available by the state of Indiana. That is, as part of that application, they would have sent in or requested that their discharge paperwork be sent to the state, and that would ultimately determine if they received the bonus. Those records were then put on file here. So for World War II to Vietnam, all of our records pertain to those bonus files. And I'll add that for each bonus, there were dates of service that were eligible for World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Any dates of service that fell between those conflicts the odds of us having that record are very slim. So unless the veteran participated in World War II, Vietnam, or Korea, and applied for the bonus, it's very likely that we don't have their record here. So as I said, in addition, we also have um, records from 1979 to 1988, and those are divided up in three sections: 79 to 84, 85 to 87, and then 1988, which is by itself. Um, and the reason that 1988 is by itself is because it is the only year that those records are organized by the last two of the veteran's Social Security number. So as far as the discharge papers are concerned, what might be on this? So our records are going to consist of discharge papers. Sometimes this is called a DD-214. DD-214s began to be used in the Korean War and after. Prior to that, during World War II, each branch had its own proprietary form that it would use. Technically, wasn't a DD-214, but that has been used to uh, ubiquitously describe discharge papers. Um, so this one from World War II, it will look something like this. It will have biographical information at the top with the veteran's name, serial number, and later the Social Security number, where they were born, date of birth, where they were inducted, and where they were discharged. It will contain some information about their service history, um, the date of their induction, um, some notes about their MOS, military occupational specialty, um, some notes about any accolades such as marksmanship, weapons qualification, special schools that they may have attended while in training, decorations or citations, any notable campaigns or battles that they participated in, and any medals they may have earned as well. The section below that will contain information about pay data. And then finally, but most importantly, perhaps, is the character of discharge. This will always appear somewhere on the form. In this case, it's at the top. And character of discharge would be anything from honorable discharge to dishonorable discharge. And there are a number of options in between. So it's a spectrum. It's not really an either or thing. Deceased veterans or veterans that were killed while on active duty have their own separate files for World War II, Vietnam, and Korea. Typically, these files will include something like this, a letter notifying the family of the death of their loved one. May give some circumstances surrounding the death, how they died. In other cases, it may be something resembling a certificate or certificate of death in the line of duty, stating that the uh, the veteran's death was not the result of his or own um, misconduct, and that they should be considered for full benefits. I take that to mean that, if you were on R&R somewhere and you started a fight with an MP and got killed, you may not be eligible for full benefits. So that's what I take to mean. Not as a result of the veteran's own misconduct. So they do make that distinction. As far as requesting military records, so there's some information that's very helpful. There's other information that is less helpful. Some information that is helpful would be the veteran's name. That's very important. Veteran's date of birth, the year of discharge. Quite often that is an unknown. So it also helps to know if they participated in a conflict, such as World War II, Korea, or Vietnam. Like I said, all of our records for those three time periods will pertain to those conflicts specifically. If they didn't participate and they weren't eligible for a bonus, then we probably don't have their um, their record here. So if it fell anywhere between the dates of those conflicts, I will go into in depth on what those dates are, but they would have fallen between the cracks, and their um, uh, records would not have been put on file here. Did they die while on active duty? Like I said before, those are typically kept in a files for veterans that died in active duty are kept in a separate series of boxes. So that's helpful to know because it will narrow down where we need to look. It's always good to specify that. And then finally, were they in the National Guard, Air National Guard, or reserves? Um, for National Guard, Air National Guard, or reserves, our records will only go up to 1940. After that, um, the veteran or the VSO will need to reach out to the Adjutant General's office to get those records. The Indiana Adjutant General's office, I'll clarify. Some information that is less helpful. Social Security number. All of our records are alphabetical, like I said, except for 1988, which is the last two of the Social Security number is how those are organized. But after that, it's alphabetical. Social Security number or service number can be helpful if we need a tiebreaker or if everything matches up except for, the birth date is a date off or a day off or something like that. That information could be good um, to help qualify or verify that a particular record is the one we're looking for. However, it's not what we start with. Typically, we're looking for the veteran's name, year of discharge, and then maybe a date of birth. As far as requesting military records go and privacy, the Freedom of Information Act and the Privacy Act places a 62-year rule on whether or not a record requires a signed authorization form. So it's a kind of a moving date. Currently, any record, any service record with a discharge date of 1961 or later will require a SF 54599 to be completed. And this is a form that the veteran can complete, giving us consent to release their record. It can also be completed by a next of kin. And the way that form is found, basically, if the next of kin or the veteran wants to call us, confirm that we have the record on file, we will send the form to them, have them fill it out, and then they can have the record sent wherever they want it to be sent, however they want it to be sent. VSOs, we do not require these forms. We rely on the veteran service officer to do all the vetting there. So if the request is coming directly from a VSO, we don't require them to sign or complete the 54599. So I'll talk a little bit about the MPRC fire of 1973. That fire occurred on, get my notes here. Okay, here we go. July 12th, 1973, right around midnight, and raged until about July 16th, 1973. 3 days after that, mold was spotted. In this picture, you can see snorkel trucks pouring water onto the 6th floor of the National Personnel Record Center building, where the fire had originated. It was too hot for crews to get in and actually control the blaze inside, so they were stuck doing what they could from outside, and they did pour water on it for a very long time, gallons and gallons of water. A lot of that trickled down from the 6th floor onto the 5th floor and soaked the floor beneath and soaked all the records underneath on the 5th floor. Mold was spotted a few days later, and if you know anything about keeping records, mold can be as dangerous as fire. And so that started an effort to get the records out into the parking lot. They set up a tent city, let them air dry. I know some records were also sent to other locations around the U.S. That had facilities to speed up the drying process as well. All in all, over 22 million records affected. That's not pages, that's records. So the pages would be, exponentially more if you were to count those individually. The Army, for dates between January of 1912 to January of 1970, over 20 million records affected. For the Air Force, from 1947 to 1964, after Hubbard James, 17 million records were affected. Navy and Marine Corps records were comparatively unscathed. Navy records apparently were kept in metal containers, which were able to withstand the fire and the water. And I believe there was also they had also kept a lot of their records off-site as well, which helped that. So Navy personnel, and Marine Corps records largely unscathed. So 2,300 for Navy and 300 records for the Marine Corps. I'll say a bit about the National Guard, just to reiterate. Prior to 1940, send a request for us if the discharge date is before that. After 1940, send the request to the Indiana Adjutant General's office. And there's a phone number at the end of this PowerPoint that has a contact info for the records office. So as I mentioned before, our records are for World War II, Korea, and Vietnam stem from the veterans bonus that was made available through Indiana's legislature for those three conflicts. For World War II, the veteran had to have served between December 7th, 1941 to September 2nd of 1945. Needed to have served 90 days of active duty. Needed to be a resident of Indiana for at least 6 months and be honorably discharged. The payment amount ranged from $30 all the way up to $600, but we have seen files where veterans were paid up to $1,000 as well. And the breakdown of that is as follows: it's $10 a month for service within the continental United States, $15 a month service for service outside of the continental United States, and divided into three classes. First class, if the veteran was killed on active duty, was $600. The next of kin and family received $600. Second class, for disability, $100 for partial disability and $600 for full disability. And then a third class would have been simply the $10 a month or $15 a month, with a minimum of $30. And again, that didn't require that the veteran serve overseas. They could have served here in the United States as well. Merchant Marine and other civilian positions were excluded. And all applications needed to be submitted by June 30th, 1953. For Korea, Korean vets needed to have served between June 27th, 1950 to July 27th, 1953, had to serve as part of the Korean campaign outside of the US, needed to be honorably discharged, needed to be a resident of Indiana for at least 1 year. And as with World War II, the options ranged as a maximum up to $600, but veterans were paid a minimum of $200 as long as they qualified for the above. And they're separated into three classes. A veteran that was killed in the line of duty received $600, or a veteran's next of kin. Disabled, at least 10% disabled, was qualified for second class. That veteran received $600. Interestingly, uh, the text in the act has an extension of service through January 1st, 1955. So I think that if that's not a typo, it meant that veterans who were injured um, up to January 1st, 1955, on dates up to January 1st, 1955, were still eligible uh, to apply for a bonus. And I don't know, again, if that's a typo or if that's because they were uh, had other operations going on, such as mine clearing, things like that, where um, veterans were still being injured as a result. And then at a minimum, assuming the veteran qualified for all of the above criteria, veteran was eligible to receive $200. All applications had to have been submitted by April 1st, 1957. All right, and the same pattern follows with the Vietnam War as well. Service dates were July 1st, 1958 to July 3rd, 1965, and July 4th, 1965 to February 28th, 1973. Veteran had to have served for 90 days in Southeast Asia, needed to be honorably discharged, and had to have 6 months of residency prior to induction into the military. Amounts ranged from $200 to $600, and the cutoff was 3 years following cessation of hostilities, so probably somewhere around 1978. As with the other uh, two sections of records, World War II in Korea, first class killed in the line of duty received $600. Second class disabled 10% or more received $500, and then the minimum received was $200. To 1988. Those records come to us by way of the veteran at the time uh, checking on their DD 214 that they would like to have their records sent to the state of Indiana uh, after their discharge. So records from 1979 to 1987 are strictly alphabetical and separated into two sections or two different categories. So here it's crucial to know the veteran's name and the year of discharge, but again, it can be approximate if the exact date isn't known. 1988, we will need to have at least the last two digits of the Social Security number of the veteran. And then again, for these, because they're so recent, a state form 54599 will be required. Concluding remarks, our modern military record collection is by no means a substitute for the MPRC. It is convenient since the MPRC or National Archives have such a long lead time right now. It's easier for VSOs to reach out to us. Takes a couple minutes to check to see maybe we have what they're looking for, and if we don't, they can move on and check with the MPRC. But it is by no means complete or comprehensive. So if we don't have the record, it is not a to be taken as an indicator that there's no record to be found out there. This is largely because, with regards to World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, applications for the bonus were voluntary. So if they did not apply for the record, or they did not apply for the bonus, then their record would not have been sent here. And in the case of our later records, 1978 9 to 1988, if the veteran didn't elect to have the record sent here, then we wouldn't have received it. Okay, and that about wraps it up. I have a slide with some helpful sources on it. And yeah, does anybody have any questions? Feel free to put any information that they want in any questions in the chat.
Hello, David. Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I got a question on the, I'm Marty Qualcombish, Knox County, by the way. Back to the Vietnam era, you said that there might have been a typo when it went to, I think, July of '73, but the war service period times ends in May of '75. So that's a 2-year lapse in there. Was that a typo in there, or what?
Oh, it was a typo on my slide?
Yeah.
Oh, it's probably it was probably a typo on the slide.
So you're human too?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Precisely.
Just checking. All right. Thanks, dude.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. All right. Well, if nobody has any more questions, I'll go ahead and stop recording and conclude the meeting.
Hey, Daniel, in the
Yes.
years gone by, we've been able to call your Indiana State Archives and ask if you have the document. Is that phone number available?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just our main number. It is, let's see, 317-591-5222.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. That'll go to our main desk, and just tell our the person that answers the phone, Carol, what you're looking for. She'll get you forwarded to my my work phone. And yep. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for attending. I really appreciate it. I hope this has been helpful. And like I said, if you do have any other questions that you would like help with, feel free to email us or call us, and we would be happy to help. All right, thank you.
Hello, Rhonda.